1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It should, of course, say 40 years in hell working for Deep Purple. I first started in 1971, late 1971, after touring the US with the band. It was Rod Stewart and the Faces, Deep Purple and Matthew's Southern Comfort, and I was with Matthew's Southern Comfort. And after the tour I was asked to join Deep Purple and I jumped at the chance. So that was it, basically. I was along since then. It was certainly the best time for touring, in my opinion, from a performer's and a personnel point of view. It was great for the crew. Certainly the best times to actually tour. Now it seems like it's all business and politics. And, it's all about money now. The whole atmosphere has changed. Not really, because that was like the best time to tour for most bands. It was a really exciting time. Every band in the world seemed to be out on the road, and it just seemed right. It was wonderful. It was a great time to tour. I was asked by Blackmore to come along, and it seemed like the end of Deep Purple to me. It was a sad time. So I decided to make the jump and move with him. And Purple carried on with Tommy Bolin and David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes, and I made the move. So it was nothing I regretted, that's for sure. Right from the very start, yeah. We all moved to California with Richie, and that's where we set up shop and started looking for musicians. He originally took all of a band called Elf to California with him, and then slowly started to replace them one at a time. And Ronnie Dio was the singer in the band at the time. So we ended up keeping Ronnie and replacing everyone else one at a time over a slow and long and tedious sort of process. And finding new musicians was the worst part of that time. I had the unenviable job of removing the musicians one at a time that he didn't like. So some of them never got to even perform. They just were replaced before. He'd be playing pool and he'd see someone pull in and say, "Oh, get rid of him, would you?" "Well, don't you want to hear him?" "No, just get rid of him." And that was pretty much how we went along on a daily basis for months till he found the right combination. Mr. Blackmore being arrested, yes. Looking back, what he did was fair. I mean, there was a guy in front of the stage who was beating up a 12-year-old girl, or what looked like a 12-year-old girl, who was trying to get closer to the band, and he was just punching her. So Richie, seeing this, it was the first time he'd reacted like this ever, as far as I'd seen. He went up and he kicked the guy in the side of the head to just get his attention. And it just happened to be the hall manager who was friends with every policeman in the whole of Austria, so it seemed. So by the time the show was over, the entire backstage area was swarming with police. And we made a valiant attempt to smuggle him out of the building. The road crew came up with this great idea. They'd shove him in a flight case, close it up and roll it into a truck, and then try and get him out as quickly as possible. And of course the police dogs put an end to that. They sort of sniffed him out, which wasn't hard at that time, having just done a 90-minute show. And he was tumbled. And one of our road crew, a guy called Ox, took quite a beating to actually prevent Richie from taking a beating. So it was quite an ugly scene, but Richie was hauled off to jail, so was this guy Ox, and we got Ox out that night, but they held on to Richie, being the more valuable of the two. And he was there for 3 days before we got him out. We carried on, went on to Germany, and we had lawyers working from both sides of the Atlantic to get him out. And eventually we got him out, and we got him to Munich within minutes of being too late to do a performance. Somebody drove him from Austria to there in the same clothes he was wearing the night of the Austrian show. Drove him straight into the arena that we were playing in, the Munich Olympia Halle actually. And he took about 10 minutes to compose himself and went right back on stage with exactly the same stage clothes on. And I think the entire thing was videoed, so I mean, it's you can see there was some sort of strain and relief in his eyes and in his playing that night. We went on stage about 12 o'clock at night. The crowd waited, and they knew what was going on. They knew why I was late, and it turned out to be a great show, actually. Definitely RB. He controlled the whole ship at the time. It was exactly what he wanted, how he wanted it, and he knew what he wanted. He knew exactly what he wanted to hear from the musicians, and that's why he was so fussy and trying to get the exact lineup he wanted. He knew exactly what he wanted to hear, and he wouldn't stop until he heard that, and he got it. A wonderful guy and a great loss to the music industry. I had the pleasure to share a house with him for a couple of years in Connecticut, and really, really nice guy. All the nice ones go first, so it seems. Ronnie was an excellent, or is an excellent guy. Nice, great man to know. We had an excellent time on the road with this orchestral tour. He was just a charm to work with. He actually did every interview I asked him to do without question. So it was great to work with him again. And he's a lovely guy, real lovely guy. Actually, Bob Daisley just called me from Australia out of the blue for the first time. It's the first time I've spoken to him in about 12 years. And we had a very, very long chat for an hour and a half about life, love, hate, relationships, the old days. Really, really good chat. It was great to talk to him again. He's doing well. He's married with 2 kids, still married to the same lady for all these 20-odd years now, so he's doing well. But he moved back to Australia and he loves it there. So. It went as far as Richie wanted it to go. He could have made it bigger, but he chose to not go to some places in the world that could have, led to bigger success. And it got as big as he wanted it to be. He controlled it in that way, and he was perfectly happy with where he was at the time. So. It was the best times of my life, I think. Living in California in the early 70s, it was just a magical time. It was a lovely place to live then. I wouldn't say it is now, but we just had some great times, some fun times. Unlike the business today, it was a lot of fun. But I'd like to go back and visit maybe one day, some of the old haunts, the Rainbow Bar and Grill, where I spent most of my life and money.